Thank you, Madam Chair. Honored shareholders, guests. I as well want to say welcome to this year's annual general meeting. It's particularly gratifying to see that so many of you have come here in person today. I will soon tell you about Investor, the developments in 2022 and what lies ahead. But before doing that, I would like to say a few words on the world around us. Last year, we saw a very complex world filled with complexities and challenges, inflation that started to go up, and many central banks had to act with significant interest rate hikes. Disruptions in supply chains continued, and the geopolitical situation deteriorated. I'm thinking primarily about the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the enormous suffering that caused, but also the increase in tension between the United States and China. And add to this climate changes that continue to go in a negative direction. So, as we've said before during the investor dialogue, there is no lack of challenges, but at the same time, there are many positive aspects to keep in mind. The last few months, we have seen fewer disruptions in supply chains, and our companies have, by and large, reported strong results for Q1 2023. And I can only say that there are many things to keep an eye on, and that where the world is headed and where the world economy is headed, well, no one knows. In a rapidly changing world, it's more important than ever to stay flexible, and I'm talking about in both directions. Flexible so that you can quickly adapt costs if demand is weaker than expected, but also that you can gun the engines and make use of opportunities if it turns out that the demand is strong. Our companies have been working hard with ensuring flexibility, and they're well prepared to manage both the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. And regardless what happens in the world around us, we, investor, we have a clear purpose with what we do. We create value for people and society by building strong and sustainable businesses. Allow me to now talk a bit more in depth about Investor. End of Q1 2023, our total assets amounted to 731 billion krona, and you can see on the slide that listed companies make up 69% of those assets, whereas Patricia Industries, where we have our wholly owned subsidiaries, they have 21% and EQT 9%. Our focus and strategy remains firm. Our overarching target is to generate an attractive total return for you, our beloved shareholders. And to get there, we're focusing on three strategic priorities: to grow net asset value, to pay a steadily rising dividend, and last but not least, to deliver on our ESG targets. 2022 was, and Jacob has already mentioned this, a difficult year for the Stockholm Stock Exchange. It dropped with 23%, and of course we were impacted by that development, but our net asset value resisted and was down only 10%. And if we look at the first quarter this year, it's gratifying to see that the net asset value is up again with 7%. Looking at the last 5 years, the increase on average has been 16% annually, which should be compared to 12% for the stock exchange and our return requirement of 8 to 9%. Our second strategic priority is to pay a steadily rising dividend. The last 10 years, we have successively increased our dividend every year, with the exception of that year when the pandemic started. And this year, the board proposes a dividend of 4.40 krona, which would mean an increase with 10% compared to last year, fully in line with the average annual increase that we've had over the last 10 years. Our third strategic priority is to deliver on our ESG targets. We have 3 focus areas to ensure the long-term competitiveness for investor and our companies. And here we have business ethics and governance, diversity and inclusion, and climate and resource efficiency. For these areas, we have specific objectives that we have follow-up on continuously. And I would like to start with a few examples. Through business ethics and governance, we have zero tolerance against corruption and unethical behaviors, and 96% of our companies carry out regular anti-corruption trainings. Diversity and inclusion is another prioritized area because different perspectives will lead to better decision-making, and that means that it's decisive for our companies and their long-term development. In our portfolio, we have a share of women that is still too low in board of directors and management groups. It has improved, but a lot remains to be done, and this is still an area that we're working actively with. Climate and resource efficiency is an area that provides significant business opportunities, and here a lot is happening. For example, investors' own emissions have decreased significantly since 2016. But what is even more important is that our companies are making great progress within this very important area. If you allow me, I'll give a few examples. All our companies have targets today in line with the Paris Agreement. And we have 57% of our companies. I think that we have mentioned that before, 57% reduction in carbon dioxide emissions, all our companies compared to 2016. That is what is being referred to as a scope 1 and 2, the activities of the companies themselves. Today, 63% of our companies also have targets for scope 3, and there we're talking about the entire value chain. And I hope that this is clear already, that we focus on our 3 strategic priorities: to grow net asset value, to pay steadily increasing dividend, and to deliver on our ESG targets. But what it all boils down to is that we have an ambition that this is to generate a total return that is attractive. And what has developments looked like? The pink line shows total return for the Stockholm Stock Exchange. It's up about 13% on average over the last 20 years, which means that if you invested 100 krona 20 years ago at the Stockholm Stock Exchange, then today you would have a capital of around 1,100 krona. Investors' total return during the same 20-year period has been just under 19% per year, which means that 100 krona would have grown to something that is 3 times better than index, around 3,100 krona. And history does not provide a guarantee for the future, but I can promise you that we will be working hard to continue to deliver good returns also in the future. And that was a bit about our operational priorities. In other words, what we want to do with our activities. Now I would like to talk about the operational aspect, how to accomplish these. We have 4 such operational priorities: to be an engaged owner, to ensure an attractive portfolio, to operate efficiently, and finally, to maintain good financial flexibility. And let me start with the role as an engaged owner in our companies. We feel that it's important to have a clear distribution of responsibilities between us, owners, the board of directors, and the management team. And we're working actively in the boards of our companies, and we always do what we feel is best for the specific company because situations differ. For example, between SEB and Mölnlycke, and that is very different from Husqvarna. So it is about what is best for each specific company. We work with value creation plans. That is the foundation for what we do. And we have one value creation plan for each company. But typically, if we look at the focus areas in most of our companies, then it's innovation and new technology, sustainability, acquisitions and company structure, flexibility and efficiencies, and finally, succession and talent management. That we can attract and keep the right individuals is decisive for us to be successful as long-term owners, and the objective is to future-proof our businesses. In other words, we want to make sure that they're spearheading developments, that they take market share, and that they outperform competitors. However, and we've talked about that during the investor dialogue, there are a couple of areas that are absolutely key for all our companies, and that is climate change and new technologies. And here, development happens very, very rapidly.
Now, let me give you some examples of involved and active ownership in 2022 and in the first part of this year. ABB has carried out an extensive transfer of its portfolio. The company divested businesses which are not part of core business, core operations, and in 2022 they also divested Accelleron and listed it on the stock exchange, which led to a further focus within ABB. At the same time, considerable amounts of money have been invested to strengthen the company's position in important areas, electrification and automation. Atlas Copco are successful in using its very strong technology, both in software and hardware, to actively move their positions forward in sustainable growth areas, such as, for example, the manufacture of semiconductors, solar panels, wind power, battery manufacture, EVs, and several other growth areas. Mölnlycke invested 500 million kronor in a new facility, a factory in Malaysia, in the business area gloves, protective gloves used at surgeries in hospitals, amongst other things. This is to meet an increase in demand, but also to reduce the climate footprint, as gloves represent the largest share of CO2 emissions by Mölnlycke. It is a challenge to identify green electricity in many parts of the world, not least in Malaysia, but in the new installation, solar panels have been assembled on the roof, and they've introduced digital solutions to optimize energy consumption. And this is a good example to show that sustainability, growth, and value creation go hand in hand. Our subsidiary Peab, a leader in automation, recently carried out 2 acquisitions, one in France and one in Germany. The French company Coval has a strong position in important customer segments such as food, vehicles, and packaging, and the German company IB strengthens Peab's position in the important growth market additive manufacturing. We invested almost 250 million in support of the acquisition of these 2 companies, and Peab is a good example of how we work to further develop companies. During our ownership, in Peab since 2018. The company has more than doubled net sales. As you can see, 2018, it was 1.2, 1.3 billion. And with these recent acquisitions, it's coming close to 3 billion on an annual basis. It's been managed through organic growth and complementary acquisitions, expanding into new customer segments and growing in important geographical markets such as China. In fact, China's share of total turnover has doubled since we acquired the company. Peab is a good example of how we work to develop our companies within Patricia. The graph shows earnings development in Patricia. And as you can see, we've had a strong development over many years. During the past 12 months, we've gone to net sales of 57 billion and profit 13 billion kroner. We also saw a strong opening to 2023, and during the first quarter, sales in our subsidiary companies was up by 22%. 11% of that was organic growth, so price and volume, and the earnings growth amounted to as much as 35% compared to previous year. Let me now move over to EQT, our third business area, where we have a number of initiatives to reach and achieve continued growth. There's raising of capital in two major funds, EQT X and Infra VI, and in 2022, the acquisition of Baring Private Equity Asia was concluded. And this is going to make for a much stronger position for EQT in the important Asian market. As you can see from this illustration, EQT's managed capital, the assets under management, AUM, have seen very strong growth over the past few years. Let me now say a few words about our second operating priority, ensuring an attractive portfolio. To succeed in this area, our main priority consists of giving support to our businesses in their work in positioning themselves to benefit from long-term trends in the market. I have a few examples that I'd like to mention. The trend towards increased automation, benefiting companies such as ABB, Atlas Copco, and Peab. Electrification of society, opening up great opportunities for companies such as Epiroc, which is a world leader in drill rigs and other equipment. In mining, demographic trends and increased well-being in growth markets, opening up great opportunities for our medtech and pharmaceutical companies. And when it comes to climate change, Husqvarna is a good example, shifting from petrol-fueled to battery-driven products. And finally, as I've already mentioned, we see rapid technological development and digitalization, and these two make for opportunities and challenges. So all of our companies need to be in the forefront and invest considerable amounts to be technology leaders. To ensure long-term attractive portfolio investments in Investor, we also now and again need to invest in new companies. When we identify new companies, we have a number of criteria that we would like them to comply with. We look for companies with strong market positions, good growth and profitability, good cash flow generation, companies with sustainable and agile business models, and finally, perhaps most importantly, businesses with a strong corporate culture. In summary, we prefer to pay a little bit more for a well-positioned, well-managed company, since we know that that is going to pay off in the long term. Our third operative priority is to operate efficiently in Investor. We're permanently working to improve the efficiency of our processes. It's about implementing new technology, using resources in a wise manner. And at the same time, we also, of course, need, just like our companies that we own, we need to invest in the organization in order to drive our strategy, be a good owner, and also make the most of opportunities out there. It is always about striking the right balance. All in all, we have a competitive cost level with total costs amounting to just under 0.1% of our adjusted net asset value. And our fourth and final operative priority is to maintain a strong financial position. It's important to be able to support our companies and at the same time have the financial wherewithal to use opportunities when they arise. We have a low leverage level today of only 1%, which is in the lower part of our target range between 0 and 10%. And at the same time, we have a very strong cash position of over 30 billion kroner. Over many years now, we've also worked proactively with our balance sheet, and we've used the low interest rate situation that has lasted a number of years. We've borrowed 23 billion kroner to a maturity of 14 years with an average fixed interest rate of 1.5%. And as you can see, we have nothing that matures right now, not until 2029, in fact. And we see a great value in having such a strong financial position in today's volatile market. Our strong cash flow generation is yet another sign of our strength, and it enables us to give a steadily growing dividend as well as investing in our companies and in new companies. Since 2015, we've generated a cash flow to the tune of 145 billion kroner with significant contributions from all our three business areas. This cash flow we've used to pay dividend to our shareholders, about half. As you can see, we've acquired a number of new companies in Patricia Industries. We've funded additional acquisitions within Patricia, and we've purchased more in a number of our listed companies. During this period, we've been able to reduce our indebtedness thanks to the very healthy cash flow position. Now, let me round off and conclude. We have a well-tried and tested owner model, a clear strategic focus. We have a portfolio of leading companies with good potential for profitable growth, thanks to considerable exposure to attractive growth trends. Our strong financial position gives us the possibility to support our companies, paying good dividend, whilst at the same time we can act on opportunities when they arise. The world is uncertain, and I am humble in terms of our ability to predict how the business cycle will develop in the future globally. But it is my assessment, nevertheless, that we are in a good place. We're strong, well prepared to deal with both challenges and make the most of opportunities. And now I'd like to take the opportunity to express our debt of gratitude to you, our esteemed shareholders, for the confidence you've placed in us. And I can assure that we will do our level best to continue to deserve your trust and to generate an attractive total return in the future as well. Thank you.